Hi everyone, it's Laura here, and in today's video I'm going to share with you 3 different one-layer cards that I created with products from the latest Altenew release. The cards that I'm sharing are part of a blog hop with giveaways, and I will have all the details in the description box down below. It is release day today at Altenew, and I wanted to show you the products that I used as well as some other new products from the latest release. This stamp set here is called Statement Flowers. It's absolutely gorgeous and it's great for those like me who love coloring, for example. We have the envelope art stamp set. This will help you create some banners. It has sentiments that you can use for your cards as well as for your envelopes, and today I'm going to use it to create a card. We have the Just Jasmine stamp set, another beautiful floral by Altenew. You can use it as a layering stamp. You can see you have all the different stamps to do your layering, or you can just color the images if that's what you prefer. You also have a range of beautiful sentiments with a mixture of sort of a print font and a script font. The stamp set comes with coordinating dies and a coordinating stencil as well that you can use for techniques like masking, for example. And speaking of stencils, we have a few more. This one here is called Floral Wallpaper and I love the whimsical touch to it. This one here is absolutely gorgeous. It's called Mega Bloom and it will make for great focal points on your cards, and I'll be using it today. This one here is called Sweet Spring and it's very clever because you basically use it like you use layering stamps, so you can blend the first layer and then use the smaller stenciled impression to create more depth in your image. And lastly we have the Over the Rainbow stencil. These are not all the products in the new release. I will have a link to the Altenew store in the description box down below if you're interested. And before moving on to the tutorial, I wanted to talk to you about the new stamping mat by Altenew. You can see it on screen. This is a white silicone mat. It is non-slip, it is heat resistant and waterproof, and it's super pretty as well. Lastly, before moving on to the actual tutorial, I wanted to remind you that if you did enjoy this video, you can let me know with a thumbs up and a comment in the comment section down below. And if you're new here, welcome. I hope you'll stick around and you'll subscribe to receive more card making and paper crafting inspiration from me. Alright, so it's time to take a look at the first one layer card for today, for which I used some coloring with alcohol markers and the Statement Flowers stamp set by Altenew. I'm starting from a pre-cut card front. This is some Nina Solar White 80 pounds cardstock, and I'm doing some stamping with my alcohol-proof black ink. I'm stamping the main image in the Statement Flowers stamp set, and as you can see I'm stamping it at an angle and I'm making sure that it hangs off the edges a little bit because this will create some interest in my design. I'm using alcohol markers to color in the image, and I'm not going to show you the entire coloring process because the color palette is the same for all the flowers. I just want to share with you the main points and then move on to the rest of the cards because we have 3 cards to go through today. I decided to use some yellows for my flowers, and I'm starting by adding the shadows at the base of the petals and also wherever a petal is sort of folding over onto itself. There we will basically have 2 shadows, one under the fold and one basically at the top of the fold, because that's the part that is furthest away from us, so it will be the darkest. As I do very often, I started with a lighter marker, I blocked in the shadows, and just at that point I went in with my darkest markers to actually deepen those shadows and create a lot of contrast, and then I kept blending outwards to create that nice gradient that gives a sense of dimension to the flowers. To create some texture in my petals, I'm using some flicking motions with my wrist, and I'm not going for a super smooth blend. Hopefully you can see the flicks a little bit better in this side view. They basically create a little bit of variation in the thickness of your stroke, and again, it adds a lot of texture to the flowers and a lot of interest to the final result. I'm also mixing color families with my markers. I want the petals to be yellow and I wanted them to generally be bright, but to shade them I'm not using darker yellows, if you will, but I'm using some brown markers. Those are from the golden yellow family, so it's still kind of an ochre yellow, but it's a little bit more desaturated, and this way I'm able to create a lot of depth in those petals. For the centers, I'm using different shades of browns and I'm using stippling motions, so it's like I'm creating little dots or little C shapes, and I am kind of concentrating the darker dots to the left side of the flower centers and kind of embracing that roundness, trying to render it with the way I lay down my dots. Next, it was time to color in the leaves, and I wanted to go for a high contrast color palette, something a little bit unconventional and that would really catch the viewer's attention because the design is so simple today. So I decided to use some teal blues. Yellows and Blues is a color palette that I used in a recent card with Altenew stamps that I have here on my channel as well as on my blog. For that card I used some pure blues, whereas here I chose to go with teal blues, which have a little bit more green in them. Overall, I'm really happy with the way this card turned out. It was really fun to experiment with something new for me, and I think the result is really pretty. And here you can see the images once they're all colored in. To create a little bit more interest on the design, I decided to hand draw a frame. I'm using my ruler, and actually a T-square ruler would be really useful for something like this. I just couldn't find it, so I made do with whatever I had on my desk. I'm using a black fine liner by Spectrum Noir. This is alcohol proof and I'll be using it on all my cards today. I don't know what was going on with me that day, but I was really into drawing these handmade frames. I decided to thicken the frame a little bit more, and the distance between the frame and the edge of the card front is 1/4 of an inch. I was really liking the effect of these flowers popping out of the frame in a way, and to emphasize this effect even more, I decided to add some drop shadows. I'm adding them to the right and lower part of the flowers, and I'm using some cool gray markers to add in the shadows. I started from IG3 and then I blended that out with IG1 and then with the colorless blender to make the transition really smooth, and I think this added so much to the design. It really made these flowers pop out of the card. For my greeting today, I decided to use one of the stamps in the Just Jasmine stamp set. It is a thank you greeting. Today, I think we are all looking for thank you cards, encouragement cards, or thinking of you cards, so I thought this sentiment here was fitting. I have a pre-cut and pre-scored card base here where I'm going to adhere my card front using a tape runner. I'm lining up the edges and then I'm adhering everything down, trying to line everything up as best as I could. And then I decided to complete my design with some sequins, also part of the latest release by Altenew. You actually don't see the sequins in the pictures I have for this card because I came back later on and I decided to add them sort of an afterthought. I still wanted to show it to you in the video, so this is why I have the footage, and I guess the fact that you don't have the sequins in the pictures can be a comparison for you to see the different results with or without these embellishments. Here is the finished card, and then we can move on and take a look at card number 2, for which I did some stamping and some masked ink blending. The stamp set that I used for this card is the Envelope Art stamp set. As the name says, you can use it to decorate your envelopes, you can create your personalized banners, and there you can add the address details of the recipient, for example. In this case, I'm using the banner stamps to build a banner on the front of my card, and the cool thing is that on the back of the stamp package, you have different examples of banners you can create with this set. There are images that will help you create a straight banner like I'm doing right now, and there are images for curved banners as well. Lining up the stamps is really easy, and I'm using black ink by Altenew for my stamping. I'm using a Misty as well because that helps me with the positioning and being precise, but you can also use an acrylic block if you're confident enough with your stamping skills. I wanted to create an ink blended background for my banner, so I created some masks. I like to use removable packaging labels to create my masks. These are rather inexpensive and they work pretty well. They don't have a lot of tack to them, so when you remove them they don't tear your paper, and you can use them a few times before they are too saturated with ink and then you cannot use them anymore. Also, the masks for this image are very easy to cut because they are all straight lines. So once the masks are all in place, I can secure my stencil on the card base and then start doing my ink blending. The stencil that I'm using is the Floral Wallpaper stencil by Altenew, and for my ink blending I'm using an ink also by Altenew, which is called Baby Pink. I wanted a soft result on my background, so I went for a light shade of pink. I'm checking that everything looks as I want by lifting slightly the stencil, which by the way I secured with some purple tape. And then once I am satisfied with my background, I can go ahead and remove my mask, and this is one of those oddly satisfying moments. It's really nice to see the design come together and everything being revealed as you peel off your masks. And to create a little bit of dimension on these banners, I added some very quick shading with some cool gray markers. Again, these are Illustrator markers by Spectrum Noir. I'm just adding the darker markers on the edges of the banners and then blending everything towards the center, making sure to leave enough white space so that the banners stay nice and light. At this point, I stamped the sentiment in the central part of the banner. The greeting is one of the stamps in the envelope art stamp set. And as I did for my previous card, I decided to create a hand-drawn frame using a black fine liner and my ruler to frame the design a little bit more and add an extra element to this one-layer card. Once again, I'm going to adhere everything on a pre-cut and pre-scored card base. This made the card making process even faster, and actually except for the first card, which took a little bit longer because of the coloring, the other two cards that I'll be sharing today are really quick and easy to make, and I think they lend themselves well to some mass producing. I had to add a little bit of glitter, so I'm using a glitter brush pen by scrapbook.com, and here is the final result. My third card for today is another one-layer card, and also in this case I used a stencil and I did some coloring on top of my stenciled image. The stencil I'm using is the Mega Bloom stencil by Altenew. Again, this is another of the new beautiful products that are part of the April 2020 release, and I decided to use some pinks for this card too. I have another pre-cut card front, which is some Nina Solar White 80 pounds cardstock, and I'm doing some ink blending using first Altenew ink in the color Baby Pink, and then I came in with some fuchsia just at the base of the petals to create some more depth. Working with pre-made card fronts and pre-scored card bases makes everything so much faster, so I think it's a great combination with these simple designs if you want to create multiple cards. I decided to add a little bit of shimmer to the card, and for that I'm using Perfect Pearls in the color Perfect Pearl. I am doing this as the ink hasn't had the chance to dry yet, and I'm using this soft brush to distribute the perfect pearls on top of the flower. I told you that this is the day of hand-drawn frames, but this time I wanted to create an effect like a picture frame or a mirror or a window, whatever you imagine. So I have two frames, one nested inside of the other, and then I'm also going to connect the corners with some diagonal lines as if these are parts of this frame that's put together, much like a picture frame. I think you guys get the gist of it without me having to, struggle for words. For some extra interest, I thickened the inner part of the frame using that same fine liner. I just added basically a second layer, and then I'm going to add some shading with my cool gray alcohol markers. I'm using IG3 and IG1. I'm adding the darker marker along the inner portion of the frame, and then I am blending it out first with the lighter marker and then with my colorless blender towards the center of the frame. I'm making sure to leave enough white space so that the overall look is not too dark. And then I'm also going to add a little bit of shading to the frame itself. This is again some very easy ink blending. I'm using 3 markers and the shading is pretty straightforward. I'm adding my darker marker where I have those diagonal lines on my frame, and then I am blending everything towards the center. I used again cool grays so that I wouldn't introduce another color in my color palette, and then at this point I stamped my sentiment. This is part of a previously released set. It's called Fancy Greetings and it's absolutely gorgeous. I love the style of the sentiments and I love the actual sentiments themselves. I think Altenew always comes out with the best greetings. You could totally call this card done, assemble it on top of a card base, and then it would be absolutely beautiful. But you guys know I like coloring and I like adding more details, and I never know when to stop basically. So what I did now is I emphasized the shading on my stenciled flower using my Illustrator markers. I looked for matching colors to my stenciled flower, and I'm adding again those brush strokes to create not only more shading but also more texture. I decorated the card front with some more sequins by Altenew. I chose a golden shade this time, and here is my third and final card for today. Again, a reminder for you that this card is part of a blog hop with giveaways. You will have a link to my blog in the description box down below if you want to hop along. And again, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and to leave a comment if you enjoyed this content and to subscribe if you haven't already. Again, thank you so much for spending some of your time here with me. Stay safe and healthy and have a great day.